I'm delighted that I have Melanie Barratt here with us today. Melanie set off on her challenge to become the first ever blind woman to successfully swim the English Channel on the 28th of August this year, which was amazing. Mel set off the Shakespeare Beach in Dover at 4:30 a.m. and reached a beach in France 12 hours and 20 minutes later, significantly under her predicted time of 14 hours. Mel was supported by her teammates, and we'll come on to that. And she's also been part of a Sky Sports News Focus Fund, Find It filmmakers, who have been following Mel on her journey from being a Paralympic swimmer through to open water swimming and culminating in recording Setting the Channel Swim. The documentary is titled Untethered, and it will be presented later on this year on the 21st of November. There's a lot packed in there, Mel, because on top of that, Mel actually did some fundraising, and she raised over £17,000 for British blind sport through her Channel Swim challenge. So much covered, and such a historic moment, not just for you, but for blind and partially sighted people, and actually for women too. How does it feel to be the first woman who is blind to successfully swim the Channel?
It's interesting because it's just more, I see it more as a personal challenge for me to, it's a challenge that I set for myself, and it's kind of like an aside to that I happen to be the first blind woman to do it. But I guess in a way it was a motivator to when times got hard, when the training was hard, it was a motivator to carry on. And when times were hard during the swim, it was, it's a motivator as well. On reflection, looking back on it, it's quite unbelievable, really. I mean, it means more to me than the Paralympic medals do, because it's such an incredible thing, like a world first.
Yeah.
Nobody else has done it, and nobody will be able to take that away from me. Somebody could go faster, but I'll always be the first. And it is quite incredible, really. But I still can't believe I actually made it across anyway.
And it is, you're right, it's absolutely historic, because ultimately, when you and I are both long gone, there will be record books that hold your details saying this was the first blind female to have actually done this. And that in itself is quite overwhelming in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, the scale of it's quite overwhelming, definitely. I guess I try to just think of it on a personal basis, and what I feel like because I completed it and it's like a personal thing, but I don't tend to think of it as on that scale, because you're right, it is quite overwhelming.
But your family and friends must be really proud of you.
Yeah, definitely, they are.
Yeah, a lot to look up to for your boys.
Yeah, I'm just mum to them.
And just out of interest, but what made you decide to take up swimming? I know you've obviously been a Paralympic swimmer, but what made you take it in this direction?
That's quite a big question.
That's fine.
So when I was swimming in the pool, I think one of my dad's friends gave me a book by Lynn Cox, she's a very established open water swimmer. She's very famous. She's done lots of incredible things. And I read that, and I just thought it was an incredible thing to do. But I just thought it was impossible not being able to swim open water, because there's no lane ropes, there's no kind of markings, or nobody to bonk you on the head when you get to the end of the pool. So you have to kind of rely on other things. And I just thought it'd be impossible for somebody to do who was blind. But I was aware that there was somebody out there, a man who'd swum the English Channel who was blind. I think he was partially sighted at the time. And so I knew it was possible, but I just had no idea how you could actually ever do it. And long story short, after many years, I had a go at it and kind of worked around the problem, and then came up with the guiding technique because I don't like being tethered to somebody. And I don't think you could really swim the channel being tethered. So I came up with the guiding system with a radio headset. And since I got that, it was just incredible. And it meant that last year we could go and swim Lake Geneva as a relay team, which was an incredible thing to do for 71 kilometres. There were 6 of us doing it, and they took it in turns to guide me.
Amazing.
And that was just a fantastic thing to do as a team. But you have to sign up for the channel several years in advance. So I already knew that I was going to be doing it this year. But gradually, as it approached, kind of the scale of it just loomed up on me, and I realised what I'd taken on. So this year it was just swimming. My whole life was just open water swimming and trying to do as much swimming as I possibly could. And yeah, it was quite a long year.
A challenging one.
Yeah.
And you talked about your teammates there. That's the Ironfish swimming teammates. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's your team? Yeah. And they were supporting you actually on the day, weren't they, as well, when you actually did the channel swim?
So I had three of three of them. Two of them are Irish swimmers. One of them is just a friend. She was a friend that introduced me to open water swimming.
Okay.
So there was Heather, Helen and Natalie, and they basically guided me across the channel, and they reassured me and gave me feeds and helped me change my headset every hour, well, every couple of hours for the headset change. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without them, that's for sure. And it was just the most incredible day for all of them. I mean, they've all said that, you know, it was one of the best days of their lives, because it was just it was just such an incredible day. Like the conditions were amazing, and you know, everything went to plan, and we worked together so well as a team. And it wasn't me that swam the channel, it was all of us, really.
Well, that's a lovely thing to say, and I think it would have been amazing to have your friends support you throughout that day. Now, the headset you talked about, when I was doing a bit of research for this, apparently it's the bone conducting earpiece. Am I saying that right? And, you know, for listeners, can you explain how that worked in the water?
So I tried several different ones. I started off initially with a system that was called My Dukes, which was just so liberating to get that. It was like an actual headset, like if you can imagine, a bit like an old style headphones, but it kind of sits around the back of your head with the receiver on the back of your head, and then it's bone conducting, so it sits just in front of your ears.
Right.
And then somebody has a radio either on the boat or a kayak or on the bank, and they can guide you. We used like a clock face method. Unfortunately, they've gone out of business, I think.
Shame.
But I came across another system called Sonar, which actually in hindsight was, I think, probably more user friendly for the channel, because we had to change it multiple times because the battery only lasts for a couple of hours on these headsets.
Okay.
But Sonar is more like a disc. It's about the size of, how would I describe it? A bit like the bottom of a, no, probably smaller than the bottom of a glass, actually. Like a bottom of a wine glass size, I would probably say. And it's very, very lightweight. And it just sits inside your hat. You can put it anywhere on your head.
All right.
So I just needed to poke it underneath my hat, and then it would conduct through my skull to my ears, which was pretty cool. And I was a bit kind of hesitant about it, but when I tried it, it was amazing, and the reception was fantastic, and the distance that it covered was amazing. I mean, it only needed to cover, for the channel, it only needed to cover maybe 10, 20 metres, but I mean, I tried it in a lake, and I swam 500 metres away from the person, and it was fine.
Oh, wow.
And the system just worked fabulously, and to change it was really easy. I just kind of slipped it out and put it in a net. And they swapped it, because nobody's allowed to touch you on the channel. Once you've started, nobody's allowed to touch you at all. So I had to put something into a net, and then they pass it back to me, and so it all worked fantastically well. So Sonar is definitely the way to go, I think, at the moment.
That's amazing. And actually, as part of that swim, then it's all, you know, it sounds like that there's lots of learning new things, and you know, that camaraderie with your team. Just, you know, obviously you're really good teammates anyway, but takes that to another level. So this is always about taking yourself to the next level, isn't it? And so just on that, starting that day, just tell me a little, because 4:30 in the morning is really early. So as you're about to commence on this, taking your whole body onto the next level and achieve this swim, tell me a little bit about the day. You know, how did you feel in the morning? What did you have to eat? Are you even allowed to eat while you're out there? It'd be good to know about the sea conditions, the weather.
Yeah, sure. We knew it was going to be an early tide, because basically you have to start just before high tide, so that you go out with the water and you're not fighting against the tide coming in. And so obviously your start time is just based all around the tide time, so we knew it was going to be early. So we had to meet in Folkestone Harbour at 3:30, I think it was. Oh no, it was 3:30. So we'd arranged, we were going to leave the house at 2:45, so we had to be up at 2:15. So basically I didn't really get any sleep.
I was about to say, did you sleep?
Not really. I mean, obviously there was a lot of things that we needed to do in preparation, so we tried to do as much as we could the night before, like preparing the feeds, because you have feeds every hour more or less, and I was on, because you have to feed as quickly as you can on the channel, because if every time that you stop you're getting pushed backwards. So it's not just about, you know, losing 5 minutes because you're standing still. It's about the tide pushing you backwards. So over 12 hours that can add on like an extra hour and a half, and that can mean that you miss the tide and you don't actually manage to land. So it's really critical. So that basically you've got to have as much liquid feed as you could. So I tried to get that ready as much as I could the night before, and we had all the stuff ready as much as we could. And I had to put sunscreen on the night before, which was really weird. So I put one layer on the night before, and then I went to bed. And then when I got up at 2:00 in the morning. I put on another layer, which was the weirdest thing to do at 2:00 in the morning. And then I had to go meet our boat pilots in Folkestone at 3:30, load everything onto the boat, and then they took us around. It was actually Samphire Hoe that we started from. There's a few free boats that start from Samphire Beach, but we started from Samphire Hoe. And what they do, it was still dark at the time, completely pitch black. So they take us around to the beach, and on the way I had to put on some anti-chafing stuff, because obviously in seawater everything rubs, and it basically rubs your skin away. So don't really use goose fat. I think everybody's asked me that since.
I was going to say in the olden days, I suppose people think that's what people do, but
it doesn't actually. It doesn't help any heat. It doesn't help with heat retention at all. I think psychologically it might do, but it's the main thing is to help with chafing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to have lights put on me as well and get ready to go. And the boat pilot had been trying to work out how we would be able to manage land because what happens is you get off the boat and you have to swim to the beach and then stand up, get clear of the water, and then start your swim. Because the boat couldn't get into the beach, so the distance for the radio headset might not be enough. So he'd already worked out that he would go in his little boat and I'd hold onto the back of it and he'd take me into the beach, which is really good because he's obviously thought things through.
Yeah.
So I had to get into the water, which was really quite surprisingly cold, and it made me think, oh God, this is going to be awful. And he took me into the beach and I climbed up onto the beach, which was really difficult. I remember kind of hands and knees because it was really slippery and stony.
Mm-hmm.
And then the klaxon goes, you have to get back in and start swimming. And it was, once I got into swimming, it didn't really feel cold, which was a relief.
Bonus. And
it was dark for about an hour. It wasn't really that bad because my team, we prepared for lots of eventualities. So we'd had obviously got the radio headset, and then we had a backup of the Duke's headset. And if all those had failed, we'd come up with the plan that a couple of my team had made these enormous flags that were, I don't know, they must have been about 2 meters square and the brightest neon colours you could ever imagine. So there was one that was neon orange, but the neon orange that, you can practically see from space, like it just hurts your eyes to look at it. And they put that over the side of the boat and they were shining a torch onto it. So I could see it when I saw it to the boat, and it was really great. I could see the boat then, which worked perfectly. So as long as I swam and turned my head to breathe, I could see this really bright orange thing. I knew I was okay. So I just kept looking at that until it started to get light. And then throughout the day, it was there all the time. So I knew if I could see that, I was in the right place.
Just for our listeners, because you are registered blind,
mm-hmm.
when people are thinking, well, how could she see that? It might be useful for listeners to understand what level of sight that you've got and how that works.
So, I think it's something like 90%, 95%, 90% of people that are registered blind are actually blind, completely blind. No, it's the other way around, aren't completely blind. Yes. I think it's only a very small minority of people who are totally blind. So I'm registered blind, but I do have some sight. So my left eye it's a full sight, so I'm completely blind in that eye. My right eye, I can see about 2/60 out of. So that means what a normal sighted people can see at 60 meters, I can see at 2 meters. So I can basically see shapes and colors. But because I've had it all my life, I've kind of adapted really well to it. I don't know any difference. So for me, I've kind of I'm aware that what I see as a shape is a house or a person but I can't see details. So for example, if there was a row of people sat in front of me 2 meters away, I wouldn't be able to see if they were my family or anybody that I knew.
What's interesting is you just mentioned about talking about every eventuality, and I'm sure all channel swimmers have to think about that, the weather conditions, what they need to eat, etc., the support from the team. But in your case, there's that additionality of, okay, let's get this bright neon flag that we can see almost from outer space and make sure that you see it and there's a torch on it. So it sounds to me that there's been a lot of thought, both from yourself and others, to make sure that you could be successful at this.
There was a lot of preparation going into it. We had many meetings in the run-up to the channel talking about the guiding technique, who was going to do it, how we were going to do it, and what the backup plan was. So we had these 2 different radio systems. Then we had the flags. We also had really loud whistles. So we wanted to have every eventuality covered, so that it gave me as much chance as possible of being successful. I mean, there are some things. I mean, those are the things that we could control, but there are some things that you cannot control in the channel, like the weather conditions and the tides and the currents and the waves and the
jellyfish.
jellyfish and the seaweed and sickness and all kinds of things that you just can't control, but you have to make the most of the controllables that you do have, which I think is the same in life, isn't it, really? You have to just try and control things you
maybe
can.
more acutely if you're in the middle of the
ocean.
Yeah,
exactly.
So just on that, I mean, we'll talk about how it felt when you finally got to France and stuff, but it was 12 hours and you thought it was going to be 14, so you did fantastically, and it might be worth talking about how you managed to save that time. But 12 hours is a long time to be thinking on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about the difficult moments in that swim. Were there jellyfish? Were there moments where you just, how people go into themselves in their head? How did you manage that? How did you get around it?
So I've obviously done a lot of training for this, and I've been on training camps where they've talked about how you feel and how you'll feel mentally and physically and how to overcome the situations, dark places that you go to. I've spent many, many hours in cold water and oceans and lots and lots of mental preparation, which I think was incredibly valuable. It wasn't just the physical preparation, it was the kind of getting to know what my body does in certain situations and how my mind copes with it. So all the advice that I've been given really, really helped. So some of the things that I was told were like, if you're feeling like you're at your end of your tether and it's really, really painful and horrible and miserable, just give it another few minutes. And then if you're still feeling like that, imagine what it would be like, what you'd feel like if you got out and you got changed and you got dressed and you got warmed up. Would you be happy and content with what you've done? And if the answer is no, then you need to carry on. I would say I never really got to that point. It was quite interesting. I also had planned all these mental games that I was going to play with myself. So when I've done like these 7-hour swims in training, I'd started playing this mental game where I'd go through the alphabet and I'd say start with letter A and think of everybody that I knew with the name that started with letter A, like Alana, for example, and think about them and how I met them. And it was really, really, really good game to play because it brought all these people back from my memory that I'd not thought about for years. And I really enjoyed that. So I saved it up for the channel thinking that I'd want something really, really good to do.
Yeah.
And after a couple of hours, I thought, right, I'll start playing the game now. And I got through just like 2 or 3 names, and I thought, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to have like the mental mental challenge of trying to do this. It's weird, but I just wanted to be present and to be kind of experiencing it and letting my mind just do what it wanted to do. So I never really focused on anything in particular. I mean, I did have probably about 5 hours in, I went through a really, really, really bad place where I think what happened was, because remember I said about the feeds having to be really, really quick.
Yeah.
I'd had this energy drink that I'd been using throughout my training, but because I was so stressed about being as quick as I could, I mean, they say you should try and keep your feeds down to a minute.
Yeah.
So you stop for a minute and just try and drink as much as you can in that time. So I gulped down as much of this energy drink as I possibly could every minute and then every hour for a minute. And then after about 5 hours, I started to feel really, really, really sick. I'd been training in Dover and somebody had said that their channel swim had been pulled because they got really sick because of their feeds and they'd been coming out of both ends, which isn't very nice. No. And I was thinking, oh no, is this going to happen to me? I'm feeling so ill. Am I going to be really sick? And then they'll stop my swim. And I actually felt like I was gagging. Then I started to feel really tired and exhausted. And I was thinking, the furthest I've done is 7 and I haven't even got to that point yet. And after 7 hours, am I going to have another 7 hours? And I was imagining, like, how could I possibly swim for that long? Yeah. And when I'm feeling like this now, and I was absolutely positive I was going to have to get out. And what happens is the big pilot boat tugs along this little tiny boat behind it that is the one that picks you up when you've actually landed, brings you back to the boat to go home. And I can remember thinking, oh my God, it must be amazing, those people that get to go on that boat when they finished. It must be the most amazing feeling, but I'm not going to feel that now. No, and I was like, oh, this is. I just felt so bad and so ill. I thought it's just only a matter of time before I get out. But then one of my coaches said to me, just say to yourself, just leave those thoughts and say to yourself, we'll talk about that at the next feed. Talk to yourself about it. Have this internal dialogue. So leave it for now. At the next feed, we'll have another discussion. So I'd kind of give it another hour. And then I just switched to having water. And I think that helped everything go through my system. And I started to feel a lot lighter after about another hour. And then I just felt a bit easier. Although I did sometimes I did have to on purpose swim away from the boat because I'm like, I didn't want to touch it accidentally, kind of on purpose to get out, because if you touch the boat, then it's over. And I didn't want to give my body the opportunity to do that, which sounds a bit crazy now.
No, you sound very determined. When we met before you did the swim, you talked about your fear of jellyfish and swimming into a shoal of jellyfish.
Yes.
Did that happen?
Unbelievably, no.
Yay.
I mean, as soon as I started and it was dark, I was thinking, right, well, they're down there, but I'm not aware of them. And it got lighter, and so I was aware of the water kind of like immediately around me. I could see kind of it's surprisingly blue. The channel, I was expecting it to be really dark and miserable, but the channel is a really nice, bright blue, turquoisey colour. Well, it was that day anyway. So it was really nice. And I was thinking, well, they're going to be coming past and getting at me all the time. And I was kind of a bit tense, but I thought, I've got no choice, I've just got to swim.
Yeah.
And how many hours in was it? Probably about halfway through was when I was aware of my first one. Because the water was so clear and so blue, the contrasting colours, it came quite close to me. And I was like, oh, so here we go then. Here they're coming now. Because it was a bright kind of browny orangey colour. It didn't touch me. And I can remember just thinking, oh, this is going to be it then. They're going to be coming at me. I kept having to remind myself, they can't chase you. It's not, they're not going to chase after you.
Yeah.
But then,
I've been 7 hours in here. I'm not going to go too fast, guys. Yeah.
No. But then they didn't. I remember being touched by a couple. There was one time when, because I'm completely blind on my left side, and I turned to breathe, and there was this great big one right next to my face, like like the size of probably a dinner plate.
Oh wow!
And then its tentacles went all the way across right in front of my face, and I can only imagine it wasn't a stinging one because it touched me all the way down the front. So I don't know if they don't have stingers around the outside of their tentacles, but it didn't. I could feel it, but it didn't sting me, and it was really, really weird. And it was only when I got towards France that I became aware of lots of them, because they're really hard, solid ones. And I remember somebody saying to me that when you get near France, there's a massive load of these barrel jellyfish. And I didn't mind that because I knew that meant that I was getting near the end.
Near the end, yeah.
I was like, yeah, okay, keep coming.
Oh, wow.
So I was really lucky. I didn't get stung at all.
That's amazing. And it sounds like a couple of them were trying to cheer you on there.
Yeah, maybe. Help me along.
So tell me about, obviously, the highlight was, in my mind, I would think it was when you might get to France. But just tell me about that moment and how that felt, knowing that you'd actually achieved it.
Well, I'd had these visions when I was training. I just couldn't believe it would happen, to be honest. That when I was training, I would imagine kind of like feeling the sand underneath my fingers as I start to get into shallow water, and then feeling it on my body, and then standing up and running onto the beach and like wave my arms in the air, and my team being, because they could come in with me, my team being there and like we embracing and celebrating and everything like that. But it didn't happen like that. Nothing ever does it? No. So because it was such a good day and the conditions were so good, the tides didn't take me too far off course. Right. So the pilot had hoped to land me on a beach, but we ended up landing on the Cap Grisnez, which it's the shortest distance from Dover. So if you wanted to take the shortest distance, that's where you would end up. Okay. It's like a real pointy bit that sticks out, but it's basically just rocks and cliffs. Okay. So I'd heard at this training camp that I'd gone on, basically that everybody that lands on there gets hurt because just basically water and waves onto rocks. Yeah. So I didn't know. I mean, I had no idea I was coming up to France until, this was amazing. This is probably the best sentence that anybody's ever said to me. I was swimming. At this point, my shoulder had started to really, really hurt, and I was in quite a lot of pain. I'd taken some painkillers, and I was like desperate for it to finish. And I think it was Heather that was guiding me at the time. She said to me, now listen very carefully. One of us is wearing a swimming hat and the little boat has just been lowered into the water and everybody's getting in it ready to go. And I was like, I literally stopped and went, no way. Because I knew that meant that I was going to be landing at any minute. Wow. Because again, like the start, the big boat can't go into the shore. So what happens is the little boat comes around to escort you in. Yeah. So Natalie, the plan was that they had this discussion on the boat, unaware. I was completely unaware, obviously, because I was swimming. But Natalie was going to go in the little boat with Harry, the pilot, and go as far as they could. And then she was going to get in the water and swim with me into land. So I still had no idea where I was landing or anything. But I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. I've actually done it. I'm nearly there. It's like, and then the big boat disappeared. because I swam in front of it, and then I saw, because Natalie was wearing like a really, really bright orange t-shirt. I could see her. She looked incredibly bright. So I swam next to her, and then she got in the water. And when she got in the water, I said to her, because at that point I could see this sort of brown thing in front of me.
Yeah.
And I was like,
you couldn't make out.
I couldn't make out whether it was a beach or whether it was the cliffs. And I was thinking, well, the cliffs are very close.
Yeah.
And I said to her, is it the rocks? And she said, yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to repeat what I said, because so it was like, oh no, I didn't want to do that. So we had to swim. We went really quite slowly up to the rocks, obviously, but we were lucky because it was not very wavy.
Okay.
But even though it wasn't very wavy, it was pushing us onto these rocks, and they weren't very nice rocks. They were quite sharp and lots of barnacles and very slippery. Mm-hmm. And she's not allowed to touch me at all at this stage, so she could only direct me where to go.
Yeah, she couldn't physically help
No, she couldn't give me any lift or kind of push me or anything. So I had to kind of haul myself out onto this rock. And so the finished photo that we've got is basically me just on my hands and knees, kind of like with a little feeble wave, because so it was a bit of a
not that romantic image of you running on the beach.
Like, not at all. But it was incredible. It was just the most amazing thing. And I take, because my mum passed away last year, so I took some of her ashes in my hat. So after I'd finished the swim, I took her ashes out and scattered the ashes by the cap, and it was really nice because it was she'd helped me across, and the conditions were amazing, and there were no jellyfish, and kind of I feel like she was there helping me the whole way.
She was with you the whole way.
Yeah, so that was lovely.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh, do you know, that makes me quite emotional.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Couple more questions. Who was the first person you rang?
Oh, actually, Richard phoned me as soon as I got on the boat. My husband phoned me because there's internet all the way, not internet, but reception all the way across. So he phoned me because he could see, you could obviously follow the tracker live. Yeah. So he knew when we finished and when we got back on the boat. So he phoned me straight away.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And then you're a Paralympic swimmer, a world champion triathlete, and a marathon runner. And now you are a historic channel swimmer. What's next?
Yeah, well, if you'd asked me that a couple of months ago, I would have said nothing, because I've had enough of it all. And then after a week or so after I did it, I was thinking, oh, what's my next challenge going to be? And I started looking at swims. You could do round Jersey swim, or Jersey to France, or around Manhattan. Lots of amazing things that I could do. But then, I don't know, this year's taken me away from my family a lot. We haven't had a family holiday, and my eldest has gone off to university, and my youngest he's 15, so he's going to be around for only a couple more summers, and before he'll want to do his own thing. And my husband pointed out to me that this year has been, in the nicest possible way, this year has been all about my swimming. And it's kind of, your children are only young. Well, he's not really a child anymore, is he? But, he's only going to want to go on holiday with us for another few years. And after that, I can do whatever I want, basically. But also, I think I'd like to focus on trying to make events more accessible for visually impaired people and blind people generally, rather than just doing these huge challenges, which are great. But I'd like, in a way, to invest my energy into the smaller local events, and for people who want to start out in it. Yeah. So by going along and liaising with them and trying to explain what they can do to help, and just to make it more accessible for everybody, really.
It's kind of giving you a bit of a platform to be able to do that as well.
Exactly.
Not just your channel swim, but the history that you've had being such a successful swimmer in lots of different guises.
Yeah, and I mean, for somebody just starting out, the channel is obviously incredibly intimidating, but they might want to go and have a go at like a Henley swim event, or a Dr. Doc, or kind of just a local event, and they just don't have any idea how to do that, or whether they could do that. And I just wanted to make it kind of join the dots, really, and make it easier for people to get into for a couple of years, and just try and make everything more accessible. And then, I mean, I will do some events next year, and I'm hoping to do local events, but also perhaps Annecy, and I never know how to pronounce that.
I don't know either.
In France, it's about shorter than Windermere, so it's a lot shorter than the Channel, but it's a nice challenge, but not something that takes up so much energy. So I can devote time to my family, but also some energy to helping other people in swimming as well.
Well, that's amazing. And actually taking time for your family, being a wife and mum, can be the most rewarding but challenging, particularly for teenagers.
Yes, definitely for teenagers, which is probably when they need most of our time, really, in a way.
Yeah, in a strange way, you're absolutely right. Is there anything, just one last piece of advice you'd give to anybody who has sight loss, who wants to take up, it might be swimming, it could be any sport, but, just from all your knowledge and your experience, is there anything you think, right, that's the one thing that you really need to think about, whether it's about training, discipline, self-belief? What do you
That's
think?
a big...
It is. It's very big, and it's different for each person. But what's the one thing that's kept you going then? Perhaps word it that way.
Well, I think the thing that's kept me going is knowing how much better I feel after doing... This is really fundamental, not about any kind of competitiveness or any kind of huge challenges, but I know how difficult it is being visually impaired or blind and getting out and socialising and mixing with people. But I know that if I'm feeling really rubbish, even if I go and do like an online workout, I mean, you do audio described workouts or Joe Wicks or something like that, just in my own house, I'll feel massively better mentally. So it's not even talking about physically, it's just how much better I feel about things and how much more energy I have for the rest of my day and how much more positive I feel. I know that has a big impact on my life. And it's taken me quite a while to realise that's part of the reason why I like doing sport, because of the feeling it gives me, not really a lot else. But doing the open water swimming, I think, has really expanded my social horizons. So, I've always found it quite difficult in social situations. I think that's really very common with people who have sight loss. And sport is really good for helping with that. So as long as the sport is accessible, so I know that British Blind Sports obviously helps a lot with that. It's a way of meeting new people and they can arrange to come and meet you at your house and take you out and take you to places. And then you naturally meet new people and that's given me more confidence that's kind of spilled over into all areas of my life. So I guess my advice would be, if you're just starting out in exercise, then try something at home, give yourself a little bit of confidence in what you can do. And then obviously, it depends what you're interested in. You don't have to do anything competitive or anything big, but I'd always love to have a go at tennis, but I know I'll be rubbish at it, but I've always loved to try it. I know that I could contact British Blind Sports and they could put me in touch with somebody, and then I could go along and try tennis, and who knows what the people I'll meet doing that.
Well, knowing you'd have a go, think you're rubbish, and then you'd be representing our country. So.
I think I'm a bit old for that. But, I think it's just trying anything that you're interested in, because you never really know where it will take you. No. Just be a little bit brave. And it'll give you so much more confidence in everything. So it's difficult to give advice. I
think you've given really good advice there, is that take little steps and it doesn't have to be competitive. It obviously benefits your mental well-being. And I kind of like the little bit brave. Just be a little bit brave. Yeah. Well, I think you're incredibly brave. I'm very proud to know you, and I've known you for a long time. And I'm just excited to see what you do next.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.